Okay. Topic for this morning, Parsha Vayechi. I want to look at two pieces of the Parsha. I'm not sure how far we'll get into the second part, but it's there anyway. The first, Yaakov versus Yosef, and Yosef's attempts to switch his father's hands. Did Yosef actually succeed? Did he not succeed? And then second, the bracha of Shimon and Levi, and was it really a bracha at all? And indeed, what was the point of Yaakov's messages to each of the Shvatim, each of these leaders of the future tribes of Israel? So, we start out with Yaakov versus Yosef. You see the psukim there on the top. That's the only part of the sheet that I didn't translate, or the actual psukim. But I'll read it out now and translate as we go. Vayar Yosef, ki yashis aviv yad yamino al rosh Ephraim. Yosef saw that his father was going to put his right hand on Ephraim's head. We know that Ephraim and Menashe are there. Menashe is the older. Vayera be'enav, and it was bad in his eyes. Which, by the way, is completely separate, and we're not going to discuss it now. But you should think about the use of the phrase Vayera be'enav all through Sefer Bereshis. Over and over again, people look at something and we're told, Vayera be'enav, it was bad in their eyes. Whether you're talking about Abraham not wanting to send away Yishmael, or whether you're talking about some of the issues between the brothers, Vayera be'enav is a constant, and it's sort of a counterpoint to the way Bereshis started, where everything Hashem created, Vayar Elokim ki tov. When Hashem creates something, He sees that it's good, and then afterwards everything else ends up being Vayera be'enav. It always seems to be bad. Aaron and also Vayera be'enei Hashem. In any case, it's bad in the eyes of Yosef. Vayismoch yad aviv. Thank you. Vayismoch yad aviv. And so he supported the hand of his father. Vayismoch is the taf memchaf, not samach memchaf, like to support like that, like smicha, but taf memchaf, like tomchei Shabbos, for example, people who provide for Shabbos, who support Shabbos. So he supported the hand of his father. La'asiro samei al rosh Ephraim, to remove it from upon Ephraim's head, al rosh Menashe, and instead move it to Menashe's head. Let me stop and ask you a question. Did he actually move his father's hand? Does Yosef move his father's hand in this pasuk, this opening pasuk? Don't know. It's not clear. He supported his father's hand to move it from upon Ephraim's head to Menashe's head. Continues, pasuk Yud Ches, Vayomer Yosef el aviv lo chen avi. Yosef says to his father, it's not so. This one, Menashe, is the firstborn. Simeon chal rosho. Put your right hand on his head, because clearly Yosef believes his father just doesn't recognize who the son is, which is kind of odd because it comes after a whole section there in the Torah, in which there's been a dialogue, and Yaakov has said Ephraim and Menashe will be like Reuven and Shimon and all that. Nonetheless, Yosef corrects him, and then pasuk Yutes, Vayima'ein aviv, his father refused. Vayomer yadati b'ni yadati, he says, I know my son, I know. Gam hu yehyeh la'am, v'gam hu yigdal. He will become a nation and he'll become great. Menashe will succeed. V'ulam, however, achiv hakaton yigdal mimenu, his younger brother will become greater than he. V'zar'o yehyeh melo hagoyim, and his children will fill the nations. What does that mean? What does fill the nations mean? Sorry? They'll be fruitful? Right? They'll be numerous. They'll spread out. Is that ordinarily a good thing? I mean, do we want our kids to spread out and fill the nations, or would we prefer they stay closer to home? I'm asking this question in Toronto, where it seems like everybody has to live within the city limits. All your children have to remain here. It's actually, to me, this is a striking phrase. Zaro yeh melo hagoyim, his children will fill up the nations. That isn't necessarily what a parent wants. Vayivarachem, it may be what a grandparent wants, someone with a little further vision, or not, because grandparents actually usually complain about the grandkids not being close to them. So maybe that's a bad statement from someone who grew up in New York and lives now in Toronto. Holding the grandchildren hostage. Vayivarachem, and he blessed them. Yaakov gave them the famous bracha, Le'mor b'cha yivarech Yisrael, saying that Israel will use you to bless their kids. Lemor saying, Yisimcha Elokim k'Ephraim v'Menashe, that God should make you like Ephraim and Menashe. And Vayosem es Ephraim l'fnei Menashe, compounding what he's done with his hands, he mentions Ephraim before Menashe. And yes, that's the source for using Ephraim and Menashe when we bless kids on Friday nights, and I would practice at Motzei Shabbos. Also, the origin of using Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah for women is a little bit later, also based on Psukim and Sefer Bereshis. But it's a little bit of a later practice. In any case, those are the psukim that we use as our jumping off point. I want to look at source number 2, a medrash in 3 parts from Bereshis Rabbah, and see what it can teach us about what happened in this story. So we start with the first part of that medrash. I bring it in the Hebrew as well as the English. Vayar Yosef ki yashis aviv yad yamina. Yosef saw his father would place his right hand, etc. Amar Rabbi Brachia said, Yada de dachas tlisa'a de alma, the hand that pushed away 1/3 of the world. At mivakesh lidchosa, you would try to push it away? This hand pushed away 1/3 of the world. You're going to push away this hand now? What in the world is Yaakov talking about to Yosef? When did Yaakov ever push away 1/3 of the world? What's 1/3 of the world? Esav? Right, you figure out the population and try to make Esav into 1/3 of the world. Yishmael, 1/3 of the world. So what he's referring to here is the Gemara in Chayiga about the size of an angel. And he's talking about fighting Saro Shel Esav, Esav's angel. That's what this is a reference to. My hand, Yaakov says to Yosef, is the same hand that fought a malach and won. Right? So you fought with God and men, and you succeeded. Yaakov says to Yosef, "Who are you kidding? You going to move my hand off of Ephraim to Menashe? Who do you think you are?" And that's the first part of this medrash. It would explain why Yosef may not have succeeded in doing so. Remember, we looked at the pasuk, and it wasn't clear whether Yosef actually succeeded in moving his father's hand away. What is bothering the medrash in the pasuk? What feeds into this comment that there's a wrestling match going on between Yosef and Yaakov? I think it's word choice. If we wanted to say that Yosef had succeeded in moving Yaakov's hand, then there are a lot of words we could have used. Right? There are a lot of words we can use for moving something from point A to point B. Vayismoch is not a word that's associated with moving things from point A to point B. Vayismoch itself is an odd word. And so that's troubling the medrash. That's number one. Number two, look at Pasuk Yudzayin and Pasuk Yudches. Yosef reaches out to move his father's hand, and then he says, "Don't do this, Dad. Don't put your hand here. This one is the firstborn. He's the one who's supposed to have your hand." Yosef is arguing with his father after attempting to move his hand. If you're really going to contend that your father's wrong, in fact, that the hand belongs in the other spot, which thing should come first? The discussion first, right? I mean, it's a little rude to just reach out and shift his father's hand like that, and then afterwards try to argue the point. Why does he do this backward? So the Medrash, I think, is answering. The Medrash is saying he didn't want to argue the point with his father. He was actually just sort of hoping to, move his hand and let it be, and that'll be that. And when it doesn't work, the attempt to move the hand doesn't work, and Yaakov says, "What do you think you're doing?" At that point, Yosef provides an explanation. He says, "Well, this one is the Behor, so the order isn't correct. The order of the sons."
So, Rabbi, you mean that first he had to discuss with his father what he has to do and then move the hand? Or he didn't think about it and he just moved the hand
Right. If he's planning on discussing it, that should come before he tries to move his father's hand.
Well, maybe he doesn't want to disagree with his father. Like, he doesn't want to be...
Right. Exactly. He doesn't want to display chutzpah. He doesn't want to have this discussion with him, and so he tries just to subtly shift his father's hand. I think that's exactly right. And his father says, "What kind of a game are you playing? You can't move my hand." And at that point, Yosef is forced to try to explain his motivation. I have one sheet. Pass that down. I went with the number that we had last time. I did it 2 weeks ago. So that's why, perhaps that's why I think that's what the Medrash is picking up on. It's also interesting to note that the Medrash uses the story of the angel. I'm sorry, you were going to comment also on that.
Yeah, I just want to know what the third of the world meant.
Yeah, the third of the world is a reference to the Gemara in Chagiga about the height of an angel. The Gemara asks how tall an angel is, and it talks about him being 1/3 of the world. What that means is, I think, very clearly not... I don't think that's a literal statement. Maharal there and others go into different explanations of what the height of an angel might actually refer to. But that's the reference, is the Gemara in Chagiga. It's also interesting, though, that the Medrash picks up on the angel story in particular. Yaakov has another great feat of strength. Right? What else did Yaakov do? He moved the rock off the well, right? All the shepherds are gathered at the well, and they say, well, we can't move this rock off the well until we all pull it together. And Yaakov comes along, and he flips the stone off the well and says, okay, feed your sheep. We don't mention that story. We mention the Malach story. Not only that, we're taught that Hashem helped Yaakov against the angel. We don't know about any sort of assistance when it comes to the stone. The Yefei Torah asks this question on the Medrash and doesn't offer an answer. The answer may be that fighting the angel is simply a much greater feat, and that it also incorporates a spiritual dimension that you don't have in hefting a stone off a well. Nonetheless, it's also, to me, it's very interesting to realize the pattern of feats of strength in Yaakov's life, and how Yosef is suddenly pitted against it. Okay, that's the first part of the Medrash. And what it indicates to us is already this story is not so simple. The story of Yaakov trying to switch his father's hands. Let's look a little further at the second part of the Medrash. In the Hebrew, it's Vayomer Yosef el aviv lo chen avi. Yosef said to his father, it is not thus, father, right? Vayimaein aviv vayomer yadati b'ni yadati. His father refused, saying, I know, my son, I know. So the Medrash says, Yadati Mase Reuven uBilha, Umase Yehuda v'Tamar. I know about Reuven and Bilha. We don't really know about Reuven and Bilha. What we know is very vague. The version that Rashi has, that the Gemara suggests, is that Reuven is angry after Rachel dies, and his father moves his bed into Bilhah's tent. He's very offended for the honor of his mother, and he wants to move the bed from Bilhah's tent into Leah's tent. And this is a serious offense against his parents' privacy, his father's privacy in particular. His mother's not really involved directly in the story. So he says, I know the story of Reuven and Bilhah, Umase Yehuda v'Tamar, and I know the deed of Yehuda and Tamar. Ma devarim shalon isgalu lecha nisgalu li. I know the things that you don't know, he says. Yosef, you don't know anything about these stories, about Reuben and Bilhah and Yehuda and Tamar. Reuben and Bilhah, I don't know why Yosef wouldn't know about that. And Yosef was around for that. Yehuda and Tamar, I understand. Yosef is gone before those events take place. I'm not sure why Yosef doesn't know about Reuben and Bilhah, but we take it as a given in the Medrash. Yosef is unaware. So he says, I know all about that. How much more so, I am fully aware of who Ephraim is and who Manasseh is. You think you're telling me something I don't know? You know, when we talk about which one is the firstborn. What is the Medrash picking up on here? What's put it differently? What's bothering the Medrash in the Psukim that makes it throw in Reuven and Bilhah and Yehuda and Tamar? It isn't enough just to say, he says, Yadati b'ni Yadati, you know, I can figure out which one is which. Right, so first you have to pick up on the double lashon, right? He says, I know, We're not in the habit of including extra verbiage in the Torah. So the Medrash is grabbing the double I know. There are two things I know about. What else? Also in the language. What's with the word b'ni? Right? This my son. If he wants to say I know, let him say I know. Yodati b'ni yodati. The Medrash is saying, I know my son, meaning I know Reuven, and yodati also b'ni, I know Yehuda. That's the Medrash's take here. But I think the Medrash is also bothered a little bit in terms of trying to understand how Yaakov really answered Yosef. Meaning, let's drop the Medrash for the moment. Look at the psukim themselves. Yosef says, you've got the hands wrong. Right? It should be, Menashe is the Bechor, he should get your right hand, and Ephraim should get your left hand. And his response is, oh, that's okay, I know what's going on. I know who's who, and it's about their future. That doesn't really answer the question, right? It doesn't address Yosef's problem. Yosef's problem is he's the Bechor; he should get the right hand. And so the Medrash is actually addressing that by explaining. He's saying there are secrets involved in the way you give a bracha, and it's not as simple as everybody thinks. I think that's where he's. That's what the Medrash is trying to explain for us. The Marzu is another commentary on Medrash Rabbah in addition to the Yefei Torah I mentioned before. And the Marzu also suggests that the word Yadati itself is the tip-off. Even though Yadati is a normal word, it's the word I would have expected in this context. Nonetheless, the word Yud Daled Ayin is used frequently in the Chumash, especially in Sefer Bereshis, but in general in the Chumash, as a reference for certain types of things that go on in a family. And both the story of Yehuda and Tamar and the story of Reuven and Bilhah involve that. And so Yadati is a reference to that type of activity in particular. Okay. And then the third part of this Medrash. Gam hu yehyeh la'am, v'gam hu yigdal. He will also be a nation. He will also become great. That's the pasuk. So the Medrash says, "Ve'efshar kain." Can this be? Is it really true? Ella, rather, ze Yehoshua shehu madmim galgal chama ulavana. Rather, this was Yehoshua who silenced the sphere of the sun and the moon. The term madmim, to silence, is direct quote from Yehoshua. When Yehoshua wants to stop the sun and the moon, he says, Shemesh b'givon dome. Right? The sun should be silent in Givon. He says, this is a reference to Yehoshua, who descends from... Who does Yehoshua descend from? Right, you only have two options. But the idea is, this is Yehoshua who silences the sun and the moon. Shein sholten misof ha'olam ve'ad sofo. They reign from one end of the world to the other. So when he says he's going to become great, right? But the other one, the younger one, is going to be greater, is going to fill the nations, and that's the reference to Yehoshua, because Yehoshua is a descendant of Ephraim. So he says that's a reference to Yehoshua, who silences the sphere of the sun and the moon, which reign from one end of the world to the other. That's the way that Ephraim is going to fill the world, when his descendant halts the sun and the moon. So I am helping him out by giving him this bracha. Which actually, I didn't think of this before, but it's a funny note now. In other words, he's assisting Yehoshua. He's lending his right hand, the right hand which fought with the angel, to help his descendant, Yehoshua, fight off the sun and the moon. I think it's an interesting. I didn't think about it before, but it's an interesting implication of the Medrash. So Rabbi Yitzchak says, he's putting this in Yehoshua's mouth. Avda bisha lavzvine da'aba'at. Evil servant, he says to the son, are you not the purchase of my father, meaning my great-great-grandfather, Yaakov, meaning my great-great-grandfather already resolved this. He owns you, if you will. What in the world is motivating the Medrash here? What's bothering the Medrash? Why does the Medrash see fit to say, can this be? Right? When he says Ephraim is going to be greater than him and Ephraim is going to fill the world and all of that, the Medrash says, can it be? Well, why can't it be? What's bothering the Medrash? All you have to do is open a Chumash. Ephraim and Manasseh never, ever, ever become, and certainly Ephraim, the great and mighty nation that he's describing here. It's just not so. Ephraim, in the entire history of Tanakh, and certainly by the time you hit the Assyrians and they exile them, and they become one of the 10 lost tribes, Ephraim never reaches the status. Maybe someday in the future, could be. But the Medrash looks at it and says, well, Ephraim doesn't reach those numbers. So what kind of a prophecy is this? So it can't be a prophecy about spreading out and becoming many. It must be that there's a descendant who is going to become great and will fill the nations in terms of his accomplishments. That's what the Medrash is picking up on. It also, I think, is picking up on the fact that, as I said before, being scattered among the nations is not a bracha. That's not usually a good thing. Even though if Abraham is told, Ufaratzta yama v'ked masafona v'negba, you will spread out in all these different directions, we generally assume that being among the nations is not a good thing. We call that Golus usually. He's also pulling from psukim regarding Yehoshua. There are several psukim in Yehoshua which talk about his name filling the land and filling the nations. Vayisham b'chol haaretz. So you actually see it fulfilled with Yehoshua. Okay, so this is our 3-part medrash, again on Yosef's attempt to switch Yaakov's hands. And what we have is Yosef trying to first to push his father's hand away, not succeeding, then trying to explain it to his father, who says, I understand very well what's going on. However, I need to give a special bracha for Yehoshua, my descendant. That's the way that this medrash explains what's going on in the psukim. Sometimes you see a medrash that's trying to teach you an ethical lesson. The medrash is specifically trying to teach us how to behave. Sometimes you just have a medrash that wants to explain the psukim. It's bothered by things in the psukim, and it wants to explain it such that it'll work. I think this is really the latter. In other words, this medrash is simply explaining the story for us. It's not so much trying to drive home some kind of ethical ideal. It could be that there's, along the way, a kibbud av va'em lesson in the story for Yosef. In the sense that Yaakov is anything but feeble, and Yosef is depicted as being presumptuous in correcting him. It also has shades of the dream of everybody bowing to Yosef, and Yaakov sort of watching and waiting and saying, well, let's see about that. Rashi, interestingly, neglects part 1 and part 2 in his commentary on the Chumash. Even though Rashi loves to quote Medrash Rabbah, Rashi does not quote the part about Yosef being unable to move the hand, and Rashi does not quote Yadati b'ni Yadati as the Medrash has it. Instead, Rashi says, Yadati, I know that he's the Bechor. He doesn't take it the way that the Medrash does. He does quote the Yehoshua part. And I believe the reason why Rashi doesn't do it is because Rashi accepts Vayismoch as successful removal of his father's hand. He says Vayismoch means he actually did succeed in moving the hand. One other note on this medrash in terms of just the storyline itself, because I think there's something else going on here between Yaakov and Yosef. What was Yosef's Egyptian name? Right? Zafnat Paneach, which means? Yeah, Safnat Safun, that which is hidden. Paneach, to see or to understand. Hanach Raza is a sefer which literally means to explain or to understand the secrets. Yosef has become this great figure who's known as Safnat Paneach, the one who explains that which is hidden. That's his identity. That's certainly who he's become in his career, whether for the butler and the baker, or for his own dreams, or for Paro's dreams. That's the way we identify Yosef, as the one who sees hidden things. And Yaakov says, maybe to all of them you're Tzafnat Paneach, but to me you're still Yosef. Because, in fact, I see the secrets and I know what's going on with Menashe and Ephraim. It also raises the question of what else Yaakov knew. When does Yaakov find out about the sale of Yosef? When do they tell him? Do they tell him at that point? Well, I don't want to contradict that. The truth is that the Torah never says anything explicit for us. The Chumash never says explicitly, it certainly never details a conversation. We do know a few things. One thing we know is that the brothers take it as a given at the end that Yaakov knew. Because after Yaakov is dead, they go to Yosef and say, our father told us, our father told us that, there's a whole account that they're giving Yosef that assumes that their father is aware of what happened. That's number one. Number two, there are signs in the brachos that he knew. When he says, we'll see in a minute, that Shimon and Levi, ikru shor, they uprooted an ox, and that shor is the sign of Yosef. Or the line with Yehuda, miteref b'ni alisa, which can be translated as you rose from the slaughter of my son, meaning Yosef, because teref is the term he used for Yosef, Toraf Yosef. There are all sorts of hints in the brachos that he knows. Rashi believes, though, that he knows much earlier. And not to disagree with the idea that the brothers may have told him at that point, because that may be as well. But in fact, Yaakov thinks that Rashi thinks that Yaakov knew way beforehand. Because when Yaakov is, when the brothers are trying to convince Yaakov to send Binyamin, right? They say you should send Binyamin down. Yaakov's response is, Osi shikaltem, you have taken my children away from me. And he says, Yosef einanu, Shimon einanu, Binyamin tikachu alayu kulana. Yosef is gone, Shimon is gone, and you're going to take Binyamin now also. And Rashi there says that he's accusing them of having done something to Yosef. So according to that Rashi, at any rate, Yaakov knew much earlier. But it's never quite clear. It's just interesting because this Medrash sort of, shows this other side of Yaakov, who's aware fully of what's been happening all along. He just hasn't chosen to say anything about it. But I think that's also an interesting ramification of this Medrash. So aside from giving us a picture of the story, I think it gives us an overall sense of a relationship between Yaakov and Yosef, and of Yaakov's awareness of things sort of behind the scenes. Okay. The second part of this is Shimon and Levi and the bracha of Shimon and Levi. If you take a look at the sheet, you see